it was a fun doubleheader this weekend in Atlanta. I was there. Terrific way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Wild finish between North Carolina and Ohio State. We're going to get to that in a minute. But first, let's focus on Kentucky and St. John's. Final score, Wildcats 78, Red Storm 66 inside what they call State Farm Arena. As I very seriously reported back in the preseason, as expected, Jaden Quaintance did make his debut for Kentucky. It came very early in the first half. He checked in and made an impact pretty quickly on both ends of the court. In summary, Jaden Quaintance and Jalen Lowe played together in Kentucky uniforms for the first time all season in the second half of Kentucky's game against St. John's, and the results were promising. Before I share with you some thoughts from State Farm, Norlander, just to the extent that you were able to see it, because I know you had a bunch of stuff going on. Let me ask you this. Do you feel more confident even today than you did last week when you predicted Kentucky would win the SEC despite some early season struggles?
A little bit, and that is we'll get to the results of the poll question in just a little bit. Our live YouTube poll question is, do you think Kentucky will be a top 3 team in the SEC this season? I'm curious to see what our live YouTube viewership brings back on that. A very, very happy start to the week of Christmas for Kentucky's fan base. By the way, if you think we're getting out of here without a little Bears talk, you're sadly mistaken. I'll work it in at some point here. I was extremely tempted, but it's not going to happen. I was extremely tempted to have Tom Fornelli just crash the start of this podcast because less than 15 minutes ago, the Bears were just given a berth to the NFL playoffs. So I'm riding very high right now. Kentucky fans feeling pretty good about this.
I will tell you, I'm obviously not emotionally invested in it like you are, but that was awesome. Dude, I got home from the airport just in time to see the very end, and that was awesome.
Woo, you know what? I'll save the Bears stuff for when we talk the Duke game because it's all interconnected on my end. So I went into Jersey on Saturday to do Houston, Arkansas. It's the Northeast, the Saturday before Christmas. Traffic, as expected, a nightmare. I gave myself more than enough time, but because of that, I was able to watch most of the Kentucky St. John's game at my house, but I had to leave before that game was done to ensure that I was in the building for Hogs and Cougars, well more than 30 minutes before that one tipped off. Quaintance, first of all, you have Lowe get into the game, and then he leaves. Was he on the floor for even 20 seconds? And in seven seconds, right? So in that moment, you're wondering, okay, you get one back and you lose another one. How bad is this going to be? Lo and behold, pun not intended, he gets on the floor. He comes back and he's an impactful player. He was obviously extremely efficient. And then Quaintance, just his return. I sent something out on this on Twitter. Quaintance just being on the floor. Yeah. And some of this has to do with St. John's. We got to talk Johnny's as well. It just changes the way Kentucky plays. That was coming through the TV set. I know you felt that in the building with all the Kentucky fans in Catlanta. So we can have a little bit of both here. It doesn't mean everything. No, quite obviously it doesn't, because St. John's has severe issues. But Kentucky fans deserve this. Give them this. They were able to beat Indiana. They get JQ back. He doesn't start. Had himself one heck of a performance regardless of that. Goes for he had 10 points, 8 rebounds in 18 minutes in some somewhat limited action. And he may well be best served as a reserve, or if he wants to bust into the starting lineup sooner than later, that won't surprise me at all. So they neutralized St. John's. They even got just stuff like Otega Owe, who was overshadowed because of the other two players. He had 20 points in this game. He had 3 blocks, 3 steals, had a really nice performance overall. So yes, I think there is real optimism that Kentucky can be much closer to what we thought it would be in the preseason versus what it had been for the majority of the first 6 weeks. A very good Saturday for that fan base. A lot of teams, a lot of fan bases are coming out of the weekend feeling nice about their Christmas and their seasons overall. I think Kentucky feels about as good as anyone that put on a show over the past 3 days.
So it was interesting. Jalen Lowe checked into the game before Jaden Quaintance checked into the game. And then Jalen Lowe checked out of the game 7 seconds later before Jaden Quaintance even got in. So they did not appear on the court together until, I believe, there was 16:07 left in the second half. And this is sort of what my column was on. It was mostly about the presence of Jaden Quaintance, Jalen Lowe, and Mohamed Diabate, who had not appeared on the court together until the second half of the St. John's game, but can reasonably be called, and push back if you want to, but that's the best point guard. That's the best 4. That's the best 5 on the team.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So the first time the best 1, 4, and 5 for Kentucky ever got onto the floor this entire season was with 16:07 left in the St. John's game. When they are on the floor and it's like, take a picture. That's them for the first time together. 16:07 left and they're down 40-33. Or rather, I've got the numbers everywhere here. Either way, here's what I'm trying to tell you. UK from that point forward at 16:07 outscored St. John's 45-26. They just absolutely flipped it. And Lowe was the biggest part of it. Now, the issue with his shoulder doesn't appear to be going away. Like even Mark Pope after the game, and it was hilarious. Like 6 men walk into the press room to represent the University of Kentucky. It is Mark Pope, Jaden Quaintance, Jalen Lowe, and 3 like people who they labeled responsible for getting people back on the court. They're the real MVPs, as Kevin Durant might say. So they're all in there, and Mark's like, listen, Jalen, he's been working hard. He's going to fight through this. But the implication was what you saw happen in the first half where he got popped and had to leave, that could happen at any moment. And so this is going to be delicate, it appears. But when they're on the court together, they looked like the type of team that most of us had ranked in the top 10 in the preseason. And you're exactly right about Quaintance, just his presence. It was interesting because you get to an arena, you're there. I did like a 10:30 a.m. hit with Jenny Dell. So I got like 2 hours before tip-off. So you're just talking to people and catch it. It's just nice to see people because I don't get into arenas as much as I used to. And it was interesting that I never had one person say to me, oh, Jake Hughes looked great in practice, or man, you're not going to believe what you see, or he's better than ever. It was sort of like cautious optimism, like we're just glad to have him back. And but when he checked in, if there was rust there wasn't much of it. He looked healthy. He looked dynamic. He looked bouncy. And you know what else he did? He made St. John's look small, particularly Zuby. I mean, there were times early where he was just his hands up here and Zuby's can't get up there. And that's a problem. And so I thought they looked great. I understand a little bit of the pushback to my column. Hey, St. John's stinks, GP. Just because you thought they were going to be good doesn't mean they're actually good. And who cares if you beat St. John's? But in the second half against St. John's, I think we saw what is possible with Kentucky, and it looked good to me.
Yeah, even just small things here. Cam Williams had, one of his best overall games in a Kentucky uniform. Obviously, they just, Malachi Marino showed up. He was really the first guy that made like a real play of impact to start the game. It was good to see and a good time for Kentucky. We'll see if it has real staying power and if it's an omen for the better. They played 6 notable non-conference opponents. They went 2-4, but the 2 wins are the 2 most recent games: IU and Rupp, and then St. John's in Atlanta. Next game of note, Alabama, after we get to 26.